What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review the Season 4 premiere of True Detective, now titled True Detective Night Country. And I won't waste any time. I'll get right to the point. I'm in. The show got me on the hook. And I've seen every single episode of True Detective. Love Season 1. Think it's a masterpiece. Season 2 is kind of a mess, but it has its moments. And Season 3, I barely remember, but I remember liking it at the time. It's been, I think, 5 years since True Detective Season 3, and now we've had a total shakeup behind the scenes in terms of the creative team, or I shouldn't even say creative team, just creative voice, because we now have writer and director Issa Lopez, at least writing this episode. From what I saw on Wikipedia, it looks like she's directing every single episode and is at least writing or co-writing every single episode. And I think that's one of the reasons that True Detective Season 1 was so solid, is that we had series creator Nick Pizzolatto writing every single script and Cary Fukunaga directing every single episode, which gave it this incredibly consistent, satisfying style. And if Issa Lopez can maintain the style and the dread and the sexual innuendo and the violence, or at least the threat of violence, for the next 5 episodes, I'll totally be on board. I don't know if I'll do videos for every single episode, but if it stays this good, I'll definitely be back for the Season 4 finale, because I have no idea what's going to happen. I haven't seen any press screeners for any future episodes. All I know is what I saw in this first episode, and maybe this first episode revealed one too many mysteries, but goddamn, it got me on the hook, so mission accomplished. And also, they only have 6 episodes to work with. They really can't afford to waste any time. I mean, 6 episodes, it's basically just like a big, giant, massive, 4-hour movie, and it looks and feels cinematic. I've never seen any of the movies by Issa Lopez, but she's got a long filmography. But I was watching an interview with her on Twitter yesterday where she was just talking about all the various influences and what are the shows and movies that are informing her approach to Season 4. And she brought up some really cool stuff. First, she was talking about just how great Season 1 of True Detective was, and I agreed. And then she started talking about 7, which she says basically feels like a season of True Detective. And then from 7, she went back to Silence of the Lambs, which is how she got the idea of recruiting Jodie Foster to be in this. Obviously, Jodie Foster, when it comes to the thriller genre or the serial killer format, there's no better protagonist you can think of than the original Clarice Starling, a.k.a. Jodie Foster. Obviously, she goes back to movies like Taxi Driver, much earlier than Silence of the Lambs. But Issa Lopez also made an interesting reference to John Carpenter's The Thing. When she said it, I was like, huh. It's like, I don't really associate John Carpenter's The Thing with all these other thrillers. But now I see what she's going for, because we have this very grounded, very savage, very ruthless, violent environment in which a supernatural threat is starting to reveal itself. Because periodically throughout the episode, we get this very ominous warning: she's awake right before strange things happen, like lights going out, or people getting their tongues ripped out, or polar bears, one-eyed polar bears showing up in the middle of the town. What the hell's the town called? Ennis. Oh, and also, I guess I should issue a fair warning for any and all spoilers. This is more of a breakdown and discussion of the episode, as opposed to trying to persuade people who have not yet seen the episode to check it out. So this is my last spoiler warning. I'm going to be drifting in and out of spoilers just because it's hard to know how to review a TV show without offering details, apart from just saying it's spooky, it's got atmosphere, it's got violence, it's got a little bit of sex. So if that sounds interesting, go see it. But that's my last non-spoiler comment related to the episode. But I guess I should offer the official premise and or description from Wikipedia, where they write: the 4th season of True Detective, an American anthology crime drama television series created by Nick Pizzolatto, premiered on January 14th, 2024 on HBO. The season is set in the fictional town of Ennis, Alaska, and follows the investigation behind the disappearance of 8 men from a research station. The season stars Jodie Foster and Callie Rice, if I'm saying her name correctly, as detectives Liz Danvers and Evangeline Navarro. It is the first season to carry a subtitle, Night Country. Issa Lopez serves as showrunner, writer, and director. It is the first season without Pizzolatto as showrunner or writer, but he still serves as an executive producer. Yeah, I have to admit that it's a little weird that Nick Pizzolatto is not more intimately involved with his baby. I mean, he created this fucking show. He used to write every single episode. I can't imagine wanting to pass the reins over to any other storyteller, no matter how much you might respect them or what they bring to the table. But this is the show that we have, and so I'm just walking into it I'm trying to walk into it with an open mind and just enjoy it for all of its merits or lack thereof. And I'm not going to say that it's a perfect show. And also, I've been fooled before. When season 2 of True Detective came out, I was like, all right, it's kind of good. It's not good as season, but I kept trying to talk myself into thinking that it was as strong. And I've learned my lesson. Have a wait and see attitude towards seasons of True Detective, even if you have scenes where like Rachel McAdams is talking about how much she likes well-endowed men.
I mean, what can I say? I just really like big dicks.
That does not necessarily make a season good overall. But Issa Lopez has indicated what we can expect from this show, where she said that she wanted to create a dark mirror of the first season, where True Detective is male and it's sweaty. Night Country is cold and it's dark and it's female. And in that same interview, she credited John Carpenter's The Thing, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and Ridley Scott's Alien as inspiration for the movie. And she also said to HBO, guys, me being who I am, I'm going to tap into that and go for it, referring to the supernatural elements of True Detective's first season. And if she wants to go full supernatural horror, I am all for it. As much as I might have enjoyed kind of the more gritty elements of this episode, like when Navarro goes to visit some bartender and enjoys some very vigorous, muscular intercourse, I was like, God damn, all right. So this show, it's not going to tap the brakes on the sexual side of True Detective, because if people remember, in True Detective Season 1, Alexandra Daddario gave us a Hall of Fame nude sequence that people are still talking about 10 years later. I mean, show that clip anytime on Twitter. People will go berserk. And I feel like if you've established a tone for a show that it's gritty, it's dark, it's violent, it's supernatural, and it's sexual, I like that the new writer-director is staying true to that and leaning into it. Yeah, and I have to, I mean, maybe I just have a thing for muscular, strong women, but that scene definitely did it for me. But what really did it for me was all the scenes out on the ice with that apparition. You have a character by the name of Rose, and there's a fellow by the name of Travis, and she's well aware of the fact that Travis is no longer with us, or is no longer above ground. But he shows up with his, I think in his socks, or maybe he's not even wearing socks, but he's out in the middle of like the tundra, or like, the frozen Arctic. I don't know the terminology for being that far north, but he's out in the fucking ice and the snow and pointing in very ominous directions, whereupon Rose finds the big reveal for the end of the episode, where several of the missing scientists from that station are not only frozen in the ground, but with looks of abject terror, and just they look like they died screaming in agony or in fear. And maybe those ingredients are having a slightly disproportionate impact on me because I grew up watching John Carpenter's The Thing. My dad and my uncle used to love to play a double feature where they'd play Walter Hill's The Warriors followed by John Carpenter's The Thing on Laserdisc on my uncle's pull-down screen. And I just thought that was the coolest thing as a kid, even though The Thing fucking terrified me as a little boy. But I've never been able to shake those memories. They're some of my most enduring kind of movie moments of my life. And so if Issa Lopez wants to keep tapping into that, she'll find a very willing and eager viewer on my end. But what I liked is how the gore and the violence is not limited to the supernatural ingredients. There's an incredible scene where Navarro's having a flashback from her time fighting in Iraq, where she's talking to a soldier, and we can't quite tell what's wrong initially until we get the reverse angle where we see that like half of their head is completely gone, but they're still like whispering something in her ear. And obviously there's nothing supernatural going on at that point, but whatever he said to her had a profound impact on her. It seems like this season is going to be a study in contrast, where the character Navarro is going to be a little bit more spiritual and a little bit more kind of going by her gut. And then the character played by Jodie Foster, who's named Liz Danvers, she'll be a little bit more of kind of like the hard-nosed, old school, kind of by-the-book person. But I have to say, it was hilarious seeing Jodie Foster pulling over a drunk driver and slamming this old woman up against the side of the car and calling her a fucking bitch. I was like, okay, I can hang with this kind of language. Let's see how the people out there respond when Jodie Foster is, smacking old ladies around. Old ladies who apparently have a tendency to get hammered and offer oral sex to the character played by John Hawkes. And John Hawkes, oh my God, this guy, I feel like HBO has been paying his bills for a long time, ever since Deadwood, which was also like 20 years ago. Loved him in Deadwood, but I also loved him in things like Eastbound and Down. He's a fantastic actor, and we didn't get to see a ton of his character, but I look forward to seeing more of what he brings to the table, especially since his son is the young officer who is working for Jodie Foster. But it looks like another source of drama or potential tension in this season is going to be the tension between the white folks and the indigenous folks. And John Hawkes' son is married to one of the local indigenous girls. And I love that scene at the beginning where we see a hunter who's taking advantage of the final sunset and sees this giant field of elk or caribou, or I don't know the proper terminology, big ass deer. Something spooks them, and like a herd of lemmings, they all charge over that cliff. And it was almost like they heard something in the wind, like an ominous, like a bad omen of incoming doom and gloom of a supernatural nature. And you just think, all right, well, if they're shrieking in terror and jumping off the cliff, like maybe we should as well. But I thought that scene was beautifully shot and was very cinematic. And I feel like I'm not the world's biggest fan of getting addicted to a lot of TV shows, but I make an exception for HBO because so many of their shows are shot in a cinematic fashion. They look and feel like movies that unfold over several episodes. So I hope that Issa Lopez will continue to whip out the kind of the big cinematic guns, if you will, and give us more scenes like that as the season progresses. But all around, we're getting evil omens. Like when we see all the dogs or the huskies in town howling, are they howling because they want to play, or are they howling because they know something dangerous is invading? Or when we see lines like "We are all dead" written in Sharpie on the whiteboard out at the research station, it's like, okay, they clearly were well aware of something they were studying becoming a potential danger and kept studying it anyway. Who knows? Maybe it's one of the situations where they were trying to kind of keep it under wraps, or maybe due to their meddling and their interfering, whatever this creature is, woke up a little faster. We're just going to have to wait and see. But luckily, we're not going to have to wait long before we learn more. And I have to say that teaser for the rest of the season looked fucking awesome. The only thing I'm not looking forward to in the rest of the season is hearing that goddamn opening song again by Billie Eilish. It's a song called Bury a Friend, and I'm already tired of it because they use that same song in the trailer for Madam Web, and I go to the movies once or twice a week, so I've seen the trailer for Madam Web at this point 50 times. I'm like, please, I never want to hear that song ever again. But as far as the plot itself is concerned, I have no answers or theories or hypotheses to offer at this point. All we know is that the girl who was brutally murdered a while back, a murder case that is still open, but a murder case which ended up costing Navarro her job at the time, but she had those weird marks on her tongue from working with the fishing nets, and her tongue was missing when her body was found. And her body had been stabbed repeatedly, and there was evidence that it had been kicked repeatedly, even after she was dead. So Navarro's got a serious bone to pick, trying to figure out, like, who are the murderers, who are the men responsible, assuming that they were men, not a monster, whatever the case might be. And then for whatever reason, either her tongue or an identical tongue was found out at this research facility. So, like, was her dead body walking around like that guy Travis, or who the hell knows? But obviously all these cases are going to be intertwined, and I have a feeling there'll be a hell of a lot more kind of adversarial moments between our two leads before all is said and done. So there's a lot going on in this episode to get excited about. My only real hesitance or source of potential concern, it's not a source of concern yet, but of potential concern, I'm noticing that nearly every single scene has something to do with either gender dynamics or racial dynamics, which is fine. Obviously, we live in a complex world, and this is a complex environment that's going to explore complex themes. I just hope that the show will remain complicated and messy as opposed to didactic or kind of dogmatic in its approach to race, gender, etc. And I think there's already reasons to be kind of excited or relieved, because when we see the tension between the two leads, obviously it's not like, a man and a woman constantly screaming at each other about being a man and a woman. It's two women that are talking shit for very different reasons. So I don't mind shows that deal with race or gender or sexuality. I just like it to be as messy and chaotic as real life tends to be. I think people have a bad habit of oversimplifying things and kind of getting very partisan and very tribal. And I just feel like the world is chaos, and our shows and movies should reflect it as such. But I think that's about all I have to say without watching the episode again and going over it with a fine-tooth comb to see if there are any other clues that I can uncover. And maybe it's good enough that I'll be willing to do so. So call me cautiously optimistic about what the rest of the season might bring. I'm totally hooked, and I'm really looking forward to episode 2 in 1 week's time. But let me know what your initial impressions were down in the comments below, and also let me know if there are any theories or pieces of evidence that I overlooked, because when you're watching a show and taking notes, it's very, like, if you look down to take notes, you might miss like the biggest clue that the episode might have to offer. And I kept backing up a bit whenever I'd write a lot of notes, but Anyway, it's kind of there's no perfect system for taking notes on a show while you're watching it, while also trying to get your review up in a timely fashion. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell. I would greatly appreciate it. But I hope everybody has an amazing week, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.